that often that the world comes upon an anniversary of such significance, of an event that shaped modern society as we know it. But today is one of those days. Today marks a century since the end of World War I. Fox's Eric Shawn takes us back to what people call the war to end all wars and how its horrors and valor impact us today.
It was called the Great War because no one could conceive that there would ever be another one. But there was. And now on the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month, Sunday, November 11th, the world marks the 100th anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I, a conflict that cost so many millions of lives and cemented America's role as a global power.
The world came undone during those years. And if it was ever really put back together, it was put back together differently, wearing the wounds of World War I that we continue to live with today.
Matthew Naylor is the president of the World War I Museum and Memorial in Kansas City, Missouri, the nation's preeminent institution that marks the conflict. The memorial is unique, funded in 1919 by local residents who raised $2.5 million in just 10 days. That's $40 million today to build it. The memorial was dedicated in 1926, and all 5 Allied commanders from the war attended, as did President Calvin Coolidge. The museum and Kansas City skyline is dominated by the giant Liberty Memorial Tower. It commands a sweeping view of the city and serves as a powerful, poignant, and solemn reminder of the sacrifices of so many. Today, the museum is visited by 500,000 people each year, and the horrors from a century ago continue to resonate. The first global conflict was so barbaric, it introduced the role of modern mechanized warfare, the use of gas on the Western Front, and untold new ways for mass killing that left more than 9 million dead over 4 years.
We soon learned that there was never enough coffins, never enough ways to bury the dead, and caused the world really, I think, to gasp and step back.
The war started in 1914, and America entered on April 2, 1917, joining allies Britain, France, and Russia against Germany and its allies.
The trench warfare was brutal.
Yeah, terrible. Your friends are going up over the top, and many of them are being killed. And when is it going to be your turn to do that?
Our involvement marked the emergence of the United States intervention in international affairs.
You can't think of the 20th century, you can't think of the American century without understanding the impact that World War I had in drawing the US onto the world stage. World War I birthed what we know as modern America, a major player in international affairs, a tremendous industrial and financial powerhouse, a champion of ideals. That's what drew the US into the war.
But today, the First World War and our country's contribution to its victory have largely receded from the national consciousness. The last American veteran, Frank Buckles, died 7 years ago at age 110. But his legacy and the sacrifices of more than 4 million others who served and the 116,000 U.S. troops who died remains.
The tragedy is once you get past the 3rd or the 4th generation, we tend to forget. Part of our work here is to remember those who served and to continue to tell the story and learn from the enduring impact of the war.
That includes displaying touching personal letters and diaries from troops overseas and highlighting the war's legacy that lasts today.
The reality is we live in the war's shadow here 100 years later. Every day we wake up dealing with consequences of decisions made and actions taken during World War I. And so our work is about examining that with the hope to create a more just and prosperous future.
Despite its historical significance, there is no national World War I memorial in our nation's capital, but one is planned. Like here, it will commemorate what was once called the war to end all wars, that so sadly did not achieve that noble goal. At the National World War I Museum and Memorial in Kansas City, I'm Eric Shawn, Fox News.